So today's session is the top 5 review session, essentially. We're going through the top 5 reports. We're not going to tell which position is every single one of them, but we're going to be announcing the winner at the end. But the reason why we're going through these top 5 reports is basically a different type of review process, right? We already have gone through the initial review, we have rated them and everything, but these sessions are more here for the public. So you also see, for example, certain things that we think that were executed flawlessly, some things that you might have paid a little bit more attention to, some minor details, maybe some major details that need to be adapted and so forth. Because the more you know about the thought process of how different things are looked into, I think the better the understanding becomes of how you should build a report. It doesn't necessarily mean that whatever we're saying here is essentially a rule that's written in stone, right? Everything is open to interpretation. That's one of the things that you're going to quickly understand. There are things that you like to follow and people recommend you to follow, right? But at the end of the day, well, customer is kind of be the king, is going to be the king, right? So you have to talk with them, understand what they're going to be using, how they want to use it, what's the style that they're typically using, and so forth. Because trust me, not always the solution that's supposed to be the best one based on all the golden rules is what your customer is going to be needing, right? Sometimes it's something a little bit different. All right. Yeah, I think we're good to go. What do you say, Anna? Ready for
Yeah,
the first one?
let's jump into it.
All right, perfect. So we're gonna share this screen right here. Should be coming live in a second. There we go. So the first report that has gotten into the top 5 is gonna come from Nandin Vanko. So congratulations. Let's open up the report and take a closer look at it. So um, the first thing when I opened up this report is straight away, right? You always gonna look at the primary line or the top line. And the first thing that confused me a little bit is if this is the entry point, why do I have a back button, which doesn't even do anything, right? This is just a very small thing. You can easily fix it, open up report, delete it, gone. Nobody cares about it, right? But this just showcases that you do have to pay attention to very small little details when you're doing, for example, the final submission. Just look at the small things. If everything's supposed to be where it's supposed to be, if the alignment is good, if anything needs to be realigned or anything like that. Because it's like I said, it's not a deal breaker, it's not majorly breaking the report or anything, but it's just something that people are going to notice. And the more questions or the more opportunities you give them to ask you questions, the sort of the more sour the taste of the report becomes in a way, right? Because you think, okay, if he didn't notice this, what else he didn't miss? So these sort of things. Other than that, dynamic title, that's a good approach. The date slicer, one thing that I know from experience, the date slicers always have um, basically a scroll, not a scroll, but I don't know how you call them, in between selector. So you can actually, a slider, that's the one, a slider with two ends, the starting and the end date. And this is missing here. Otherwise, you kind of have to manually enter the data or click on the calendar and just pick two dates, right? But I know that there's a slider also supposed to be there. The cards feels okay, but there is one thing that I want to pay attention to, and we've talked about this hundreds of times. If you tell me that this is the value versus previous year, I expected to make sure also to tell me what year versus year is being compared. Because right now, I'm looking at all the data starting from 2017 up to 2025, and I have no idea which is the previous year. The first initial feeling is that it's going to be 2025 versus 2024, right? So if I would select 2025, these results should not change, but they do change, meaning that the number is most likely some sort of an average taking all the time frame into consideration, but it also skews the data and is incorrect representation. So it's better to handle these sort of scenarios. You tell me straight away which month over month or year over year analysis you're doing. Just show me which year over versus which year is being compared. Or the alternative is if you have a situation where more than 1 year is available, basically define an if clause, right? If more than 1 year is available, provided not applicable, right? Or something like that. Just don't give me a number which doesn't really tell me anything. It's one of those little small things. Uh, the cards itself, like I said, were fine. Maybe the positioning a little bit. You can see we have a lot less space at the top than we have at the bottom. This is just design things, but Other than that, these are looking good. They feel nice. It's not too overcrowded, just few minor details. The I button, of course, it kind of brings your attention to it because none of the other cards have it. So when you click on it and it actually showcases the references a different card, kind of threw me off a bit. Most likely, what happened is, well, this just needed to be moved to the right, but maybe due to repositioning of the cards afterwards, or whatever the reason is, this suddenly is in a different position, right? So make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be, like I said. The timeline slicer, that's fine, have no issues with it. The table as a heat map, that's fine. Highlighting the highest values, the consistency, that's good. For the donut charts, I would not showcase the legend. And I'll tell you why. Right now, whenever you're showcasing legend, what you're essentially trying to help person understand is what color represents what, right? In this case, you're also using base fill color, which means that the highest value slice is going to be the strongest color essentially. So we can see that this is cat right now. If I decide to cross filter it to something else, suddenly exactly the same color means bird, right? So the tricky part here is I understand that from a styling perspective, right, it fits better, but at the same time, this also gives me way on how this can be misrepresented. So what I would probably do is get rid of the legend and just maybe have categorical names or something like that. Not have all the details, but maybe just the category label. Remember, you do have the option of showcase. You already have it here, also the other section, right? So it means that you can define, for example, showcase only the top three, the top four, or something like that to kind of control how much items you have there. So that's another thing, and it applies for both of these. If you go to other pages, these ones seemed a little bit better. Few things here. The changer for the field parameters, I would most likely have some text here explaining what this is. Otherwise, it basically just gives you a selection, but you don't know what you're selecting and what it's going to do. Give me a basic title of select the metric, and now I have the metrics from which I can select. The other thing is whenever you have checkboxes, always make sure that you disable multiple selection with control. Because this very clearly I'll now showcases two values, but I don't know which one is actually being shown right now, right? So that's one of the tricky parts here. That's there. Cards, a little bit of a detail. The value is being cut off. Don't do that. You can see also alignment. This goes up, this goes down. These ones seem aligned, but this seems disproportionate. I, again, a little bit of misalignment seems like. Here, this is one of the prime examples of what I wouldn't do, and I'll explain why. If you are comparing two different values on the same chart, do not try to make them both the same chart type. And I'll explain why. Because right now, without going into details and looking, okay, this is that, that's that, because, okay, we have the colors, but you have four different lines, right? The first reading of it doesn't really indicate that total adaptation is actually on a numerical scale. And it's right here in the middle. So it kind of skews the data and doesn't give you a proper representation. So maybe having a columns and a combination of lines would be a better representation. Or what I would have actually most likely done is, since those are adoption cases, means out of all the cases, this is just a percentage. Just make it a rate as well, so that everything is percentage based. And then it's a lot easier to understand the results. Uh, yeah, the other things were okay. But yeah, I think this is what Una mentioned to me as well, and Una, you can chime in as well. The most
Yeah.
confusing thing here was this one right here.
Yeah, the menu, unfortunately, I mean, I get the idea behind it, but the execution here wasn't the best, I would say, especially the two very similar icons that represents the reset button.
This
Um,
one,
yeah, and then the almost very same reset
for
is
repeat
mentioned, like a
cases, yeah.
navigation page. Yeah. So this was very confusing for me. It took me a while to understand what I'm clicking and what is actually meant by each of those icons.
Yeah. So just remember, right, when you have these icons, make sure that they're explicit, right? They showcase something specifically, they don't focus on a general group. So you can easily navigate and understand these ones are too close to have comfort for the user. Because trust me, 90% are still going to click the other one out of pure just memory. So that's one of the things. Other than that, I'd say everything else was fine. Few minor little details design wise, but other than that, I think it's a good report, and well, there's a reason why it's in the top five, right? I don't know, maybe I missed something. Una, did you see anything else?
Oh, no, I think you covered most of. Oh, maybe one thing is if you do use a timeline visual in the report, there's not really you don't really need this slicer, date slicer. Well, in
Okay.
either of places, but yeah, because it just it does the same thing, and it just takes your report space unnecessary.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, congratulations and getting into the top five. I think we can go on to the second one. So
Yeah.
this second report that has gotten into the top five comes from Akindele Omaloya. So congratulations. And this one I'm gonna give to you, Una. So
Yeah,
go ahead,
thank
tell me
you.
what to do.
Yeah, I need to look at my notes. I sort of wrote down a couple of things so I don't forget them. But yeah, I like this report. To be honest, it was a good analysis. Lots of lots of different angles how to look at the data. Couple of things that kind of stood out to me that I didn't quite like. The major one for me, is design one. That this report mixes up angled corners and rounded corners. This is sort of the very first thing I noticed because it creates this balance for me that somehow it just doesn't really fit well together. So I wouldn't suggest mixing these. Or if you are mixing these, that probably the spacing or layout should be a bit different. But yeah, this was kind of one thing that stood out to me almost immediately. As from the data perspective, I did notice like two charts that I think are not following sort of what we would consider the best data practices. The one is really here in this page, the map visual, combined with the combo chart or column chart. The way it's positioned, it kind of suggests to you that that column is actually a legend for the map, where it's not. It's meant like a separate chart. So my first impression was okay. So you are conditionally formatting the map, the regions or the data points, right? But sort of looking closer at that, I discovered okay, no, those are two completely different charts. But because they're kind of placed together, it simply suggests that it's a heat map when it's not. So that is the one thing. And if you go to the, let's say, what was the, I think it was third page, outcomes.
Hmm.
The outcomes, yeah, the donut charts. I mean, the charts themselves, they look good, but the data sorting here is a bit off. Um, the best practice usually for the donut chart, because you are comparing different categories and you want to basically quickly see which are the largest one, which is the next largest one. We usually suggest to sort by category size or slice size. But here, which is done in the second donut at the bottom. But then, for some reason, for the first donut, the sorting is different, sort of other way around. And I think what has been done here is trying to sort by alphabet, by the category names, by the alphabet, right? But it resulted in this not so good data representation at the end. So I would suggest to switch to data sorting based on value, and then both of those charts would look great. And third thing is on the fourth page, I think, the adoption. Yeah, where you have a scatter chart. So it's a great idea to use a scatter chart. Nothing wrong with that. But if you click down, drill down, you will notice that on all of those cases, you simply drill down to adoption, which is the idea for this whole page, right? So it's really not necessary to have that kind of drill down level. It just doesn't give you any value. So the just one drill down here would be the best approach, I would say. Another comment for this specific page adoption, which kind of threw me off a little bit, was that the page says adoption. So when I open it, I kind of expect to see, adoption data, but then the very first card says intakes, and then there is total intakes by jurisdiction, and then it kind of confuses me, and I really have to focus to understand, okay, what exactly is meant here in this page. Is it really just about the adoption? Uh, what's happening there. So I wouldn't suggest to mixing these things. So if the page is named adoption, then stick to adoption data. Yeah, but other than that, I really like the report. I
That's
guess
good.
that's 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 yeah. Those are like sort of the more you look at the report, and for each of those reports, you always can find something to kind of focus on and see what's happening, right? But overall, yeah, there are some design things to sort out, but the analysis itself was very good.
Yeah, I agree. The few things that I quickly noticed is, for example, clear slicers. This right here at the top doesn't feel like a button. It almost feels like just a secondary text of some sort. So, because everything else is icon based, so it feels like more of a button, but this one feels just like plain text. So I would probably redesign this part. Um, for the information overlay, you can see that the visual order hasn't been taken into account, and we have actually the text from the combo bar being highlighted through. That's another thing. And regarding this one, I know it's always tricky, right? Whenever you build a design, you kind of want to choose your primary color and sort of your accent color. So what you're doing in every single chart is you're highlighting the highest value, which gives me the indication, okay, if I ever see this color, most likely means the primary thing, the main thing I need to focus on, right? Whereas here, suddenly you're kind of switching things around, and the whole series is in the same color, and then the secondary series is in the secondary color, which kind of threw me off a little bit. What I most likely would have done is applied the same logic. So highlight a certain column which has, for example, the highest results, and then for the line, maybe use a different color or something like that, just to kind of have a better overall feeling about it. For the other pages, it seemed fine. Like Kuna mentioned, the one thing, yeah, of course, the donut charts. You can see here the sorting is also taken into account, even though this is textuals. I mean, it ideally kind of falls in because numbers are always going to be sorted first before the letters. And even if you do alphabetical, you don't even need custom sort. So this kind of works for it. But it does make sense in this one. Not a fan of quick uh, text boxes inside of charts, and I'll explain why. Like, for example, if you have any situation where a lot of the columns are going to be the same width, see, it goes underneath the text box. So it's one of the things that you just need to be cautious about. Outcomes and everything else Suna already covered. The table is fine. The donut charts, the sorting. I love that you put the Q letters so I can understand what exactly is the sparkline kind of showcasing, because that isn't the case for every single report. Some of them just have a line and then I have to figure out what it represents. Other than that, I'd say, yeah, just minor design details. Other than that, it's a good report. Very well executed. Congratulations. All right, let's go on to the next one. So the next report that has gotten itself into the top five comes from Zulay Vivas. So Zulay, congratulations. Zulay is one of the season top five ones. She has a lot of entries here, but the more the merrier.
Yeah,
Uh,
and
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
I just can mention that I do remember this participant from the very start when they started to participate here. So I just can say that I have seen the growth here very very much. So congratulations on that. I really
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
seen the skill level improving. So
And that's one of the fun things to see, right? How the participants are actually progressing. There's always the sad moment when you realize that, for example, for some of you this is just an exercise where you're developing your skills. For some of you this is the way on how you build portfolios, then you find jobs, of course, and we're happy for that. But for us the sad part is that, once we start to see people progress to a certain level, they just disappear.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's always good to see, for example, people come back from time to time and kind of showcase what they learn over time and everything. So that's fun to see. But yeah, so regarding this one, uh, I like the overall design. I like that it's light. It doesn't feel very heavy. I like this part right here, which is that you have the floating tooltops, for example, for inside icons. And what I liked about this inside specifically is that we've always told you this, right? Even for these challenges or for FP20, um, if you ever do conditional formatting, make sure you explain to the user what the color represents. Because green and red, sure, we have indication it's good or bad, right? But the tricky part is because sometimes, most likely, people associate increase with a green and decrease with a red, but it doesn't necessarily always mean that. So you kind of have to explain that sometimes increase is good or increase is bad. In this case, for example, right? If the total number of intakes is increasing, so more animals are coming into the shelter, that's not a great thing, right? Even though it's an increase, and vice versa. The more successful outcomes there are, the better it is, because that's a good result. So you have to explain this to the users, and I think it's done very neatly here. It doesn't take away too much space, and it's only needed whenever you hover over it. So that's good execution. The cards itself are field parameters, allows you for selection. And I like that you also paid attention to this fact, and in the guide you explain this to the user. So that's nice touch to details. Also, what I mentioned before, straight away telling me what is being compared over what. You're eliminating any of the questions I had. For example, what exactly would be month over month? You're telling me what is compared against what. Showcases the result. No questions needed. The charts itself, good. The x-axis is exactly the same. No issues whatsoever. If I click on one of the other cards, for example, it switches the values. So everything is working good. It cross filters the information and everything. The timeline is there, so you don't need any additional time-based charts. You have the ability to drill down, so the cross filtering is working as well. That's very well executed. Maybe a little pet peeve would be, I wouldn't put update date in blue, because I don't think that is the primary thing you need about this report. It's more of a secondary thing that you can always have there as a reference. For example, when was the last date of refresh? But here it feels like it's the same importance as the title of the report, which isn't the case most likely. And also, I would just add last update date. Otherwise, I started to think that this is a button I wanted to update. But it's just me. If you go to the adoption page here, there is one thing that, Zula, you have missed, and that is you missed the point where what is the default selection for the field parameter. So, for example, if this page is about adoption, my assumption would be that you start off with the total adoptions, because that is the main thing you're focusing on this, right? The overview was about total outcomes and everything, but here I just want to focus on adoptions primarily. I still have the ability to switch around, but I think the entry point should be adoption rates. That's one thing. And the other thing is, if this is the entry point, you can see right here in the card, I think you have forgotten to switch out the parameter instead of a static value. So this always shows you the total number of adoptions, even though the chart itself is showcasing the total number of outcomes. So I would make everything a parameter just to make sure that people have the same results everywhere. Other than that, the cross filtering, like I said, is working, so no issues whatsoever. This one, the style is unanimized. It's the same across the board. A quick insight to, for example, explain what these groups represent and everything. I love it. It's simple, efficient, and it's not too overcrowded with unnecessary things. Yeah, I don't know. Una, maybe you have something to add.
Yeah, I just want to add, I mean, you mentioned simplicity, and now the simplicity is the hardest thing to achieve, I guess. And when it comes to design, I just want to say I know what it means to figure out, each of these small things, the colors, the highlights, rounded corners, squared corners, placement of text, the sizes and everything. And I mean, everyone who is putting in the work to do this, it's just my hats off to you, because this is the part where you kind of see where good reports stand out from excellent reports. This time you take to polish everything, and yeah, the participant here really has put in the time to do that. So my hats off to you.
Absolutely. So yeah, very well made, very well executed. Small little details as always, but we've always said this, right? Every single report has small little details to improve, right? Every single report that also we develop, there's always things that we could do better. Somebody thinks might have been done differently, and that's fine. The main idea about all this feedback and how you should take the sort of constructive criticism into account is think about it as an option. You don't necessarily have to do this in this particular way, but just think about these things when you're building a report. So it just gives you a little bit more insight. But yeah, definitely congratulations in getting into the top five, and most definitely it's a very good job. So kudos to you. All right, let's go on to the next one. So the next report that has gotten itself into the top five comes from Nina Ikpe. So Nina, congratulations. Let's open up the report, and this one I'm also gonna give to you, Una. So
Yes,
go
thank
ahead.
you. Yeah, this was one of my favorite ones, because similar to the previous one, the design is sort of light and easy, and the layout it's so well executed that it's very easy to read. There's nothing extra that is not necessary. It just goes straight to the point, and yeah, I really loved it from that design perspective. But even more from the fact, the way Nina has selected what to show there, what kind of pages to create and what data to put in, because even I'm not an expert on animal shelter operations at all. I have no idea what's important to them. I kind of felt, okay, if I would have to look at the data, these would be the most important things, or the first things I would look at. So really very good job on selecting what to show in the report. So that's the one thing I wanted to emphasize here for sure. Um, the couple of things that, well, once I started to explore more, of course there were a couple of things I noticed, and the one KPI that is missing for me, so I see the intakes, I see the outcomes, and if I'm doing the operations analysis, I would probably want to see, okay, how many animals are in our care right now. So that's the number that I'm missing here. So how many animals we have in our shelter at the moment. um, And for the average length of stay, my first question was, okay, is it days, months? So the unit there is missing. Sort of just a small thing, but kind of important one, I guess, if you're doing analysis, right? Um, and yeah, if you go to the next page, the live release here, yeah, the same thing you mentioned previously. There's a comparison with the last year, but there's no information on, which is the last year. Uh, yeah, so I would say this is probably a common mistake in a lot of reports, just to figure out all these sort of small things when the person is actually looking at the data. Um, what else? Yeah, I really like the conditional formatting and the thresholds that are used all through all these pages, because it brings in additional context. And additional context, it is something that I'm looking for always in the reports. As a product manager, I'm always looking at data. Okay, the number of usages, what's happening with the trials, with the purchase and stuff and that. And the data itself doesn't really tell me a story unless I have either targets to look at or the average numbers or something like that, just to understand how well you're doing, whether the result is good or bad. Are we there where we want to be, or are we not? So having that in the report, it's a very important thing, and it's here. So I'm very, very happy to see that. One thing about the conditional formatting I will say is that the consistency isn't really there throughout the report. And what I mean by that is that now you're using the red color for sort of bad results, at least in this page, right? Release live release rates for wild animals is the lowest, which of course that would be sort of something to emphasize that this is a bad result and color it in red, that's fine. But if you go to other pages, let's say lengths of stay, um, here this red is used to emphasize the biggest portion of the data, which I wouldn't say necessarily mean the bad result, right? Like category rabbit doesn't really say, I mean, is it really bad that they're staying the longest? And or in the next one, the behavior as a category. So here, I would expect this consistency where you use sort of the red one throughout the reports. Um, yes, what else? I don't think there was something else really that I want to emphasize. One thing, yeah, I remember. If you go to the, I think it's also either live releases or lengths of the stay pages. There was this donut which was very small and hard to. Yeah, this one. I mean, there's nothing wrong to putting a donut there itself, but because of the size, and especially I mostly using the laptop when I'm looking at reports, so the size here for me it was almost unreadable. Yeah, that's something to consider when you're creating reports. How it will transfer to different screen sizes. Yeah, I guess that's all I can mention here because overall, I really, really love this report. Ivis, maybe you want to mention something from your side?
The one thing, yeah, that you mentioned as well regarding the color, the reason why I noticed it as well first is because, as you mentioned, it kind of indicates. So red is immediately associated with something bad in our bread, right? But at the same time, that number is being used for every KPI. So intakes, I agree. A high number of intakes is bad. Outcomes, debatable, depends on what outcome. But the number of adoptions, I mean, the fact that they are getting adopted is good. The fact that there's a live release percentage, that's not necessarily bad. So the color, you have to be very cautious about it. Design wise, it works. There's no issues with it. But just purely from a color psychology perspective, this is one thing that I would reconsider maybe. You're utilizing different switches as well. For example, you can see now we have two KPIs and everything like that, which is fine. Focusing on the smallest going to the highest, understandable, because I want to see which species in particular have the lowest rate in any of the metrics that I select. That's fine. Length of stay, here everything seemed fine. Outcome type also able to switch. Mhm. There we go. Found one thing. This is sort of the thing that you always have to be very cautious about. Whenever you have field parameter switches on top of a visual container, because this is what's done. This is still part of the combo bar, right? So the combo bar is essentially going throughout the whole container. And on top of it, there are field parameter switches. If this is the first thing you interact with, you can see I can switch without any issues. But if the user clicks on something in the visual, what happens from a layering perspective, the chart is being brought to the front unless you disable this capability in the settings. So what happens now is if I want to switch, you can see nothing happens. So I can't do anything now. And it feels like it suddenly broke. It's an easy fix. I can just click in a white space and then I suddenly can again select. That's because essentially the layering of the items. And that's one thing you have to be cautious about. Trust me, you ain't the only one. We've fallen for this as well many times ourselves when you just forget about certain things, right? So you make them, it feels that it's okay, but then you give it to somebody else and they're like, this isn't working. First reaction, what do you mean it's not working? I know I tried it out. It works perfectly. But there's a reason why they're not working, right? So that's one thing. Yeah, that was one thing. And the other thing is the chart selection in these two instances. So what essentially is being done in these two different charts is Nina's comparing if the library's rate, for example, how much it depends between the repeated animals in the shelter and the first time sort of visitors in the shelter. I don't think a donut chart is a good value for value comparison as to if the value is exactly the same. Because you can see, for example, if I hover over it, the super confusing part where everybody would be repeat 91.24%, which is 54% of 29%. It just feels like there's too much percentages. So it's one of the things that you have to be cautious about. I would most likely use maybe a bar chart. You could have two bars right next to each other. You could have one bigger bar, one shorter bar, just to kind of showcase where one or the other stands. Or this could have been just a simple a card, which would just showcase one versus the other and the difference, or something like that. Yeah, maybe year over year trend for these as well to see maybe there's some sort of a specific nuance that I want to see here as well. And the same idea here. Average length of stay, you're taking the days, splitting the donut chart in half, but I would most likely use a different chart type. Not even most likely, I would definitely use a different chart type. But other than that, I think it's a good report. The info overlay is there. You can hover over it. It explains everything. The reset is working, allows you to clear filters if you have applied anything. The switches, the cross chart filtering is there. It feels light, it feels simple, but it does the job and it answers. So,
Yeah, I just remembered one thing that I
sure.
noticed about the interactions about the information overlay. I think I would add also the drill down as a hint. I mean, it is mentioned in
Mm,
the title for the charts, but if you go there, it's not there, right? And at least for me as a Zoom charts product person, drill down is kind of important one.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Because you even put right here in the middle that hover on charts for more info, which kind of from sort of end user perspective, I think that would probably mean that okay, so the main point that you want me to do is just hover over things,
Yeah,
no
exactly.
interaction, just that's the main thing you want me to see, not the fact that there's a drill down or that there's cross chart filtering. Hovering is enough. So yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah, but that's the only thing I can add.
Yeah, other than that, I think it's an excellent report. It does the job very well. So then we have one more left. So the final report that has gotten itself into the top five for this challenge is going to come from, I forgot to close this, Sidesh Pardeshi. So, Sidesh, congratulations. Went a bit too far. There we go. Yeah. Let's open up the report and take a closer look at it. There we go. So, um, for this one, the few things that I noticed when I first opened it up, I mentioned this for, I think it was for Zula and some other reports. I mentioned this. If you have some sort of a trend line indicating some sort of a trend pattern or anything in a KPI card, please explain to me what this chart actually is showcasing. Like even on the x-axis, don't force me to hover over the actual chart to just see, okay, 1 2 3, okay, that could be the month name, so I'm guessing this is the timeline. Okay, everything's showing the same thing, seems like it. Yeah, seems fine. But then there's the tricky part. If I, for example, select 2025, let's see, I think it was here. I might be wrong. I am wrong. It was somewhere else. But essentially, the cross filtering, sometimes what it might cause is because charts essentially by default omit missing data points. If you have any months that don't have any data, what might happen on a chart is that some of the charts have more months, some of them have less, but you should always have the same timeline, just missing data points. That's one thing. So yeah, that's just a small nuance I noticed. The other thing, I don't think that it's a good practice to allow these visuals in the cards to be filters, because otherwise this is what kind of comes to a sort of a conclusion, right? Whenever I click on one dot, well, I have three dots everywhere else. Great. not giving me any context, just some random dots somewhere on the KPI card. So cross-chart filtering between these items should have been disabled. You should be able to still cross-filter information from other charts, like for example, selecting a year, selecting a quarter or something. But if it's just a single month, I would most likely play around with the DAX capabilities and create a secondary series which would highlight the selected month. But do not get rid of everything else and just leave a single dot. That's very hard for the user to understand. So that's one thing. Uh, what else? If we look at the KPI cards, there's one more thing that I noticed, which I don't know, maybe I'm not fully getting it, but this is what where I got lost for a second. Um, I want to get to a result which kind of have this. Okay, yeah, maybe this one's gonna work. So versus last year, you heard the comment before. I wanted if I don't have a single year selected, I don't want it to have any last year comparison because I don't know what it is. And if I select the last year, which I would expect to be there, you can see that is not the final result. So those are different values. And the other thing is, this is a percentage. This is also a percentage, but it's referenced to as percentage points or previous period. So this is just something that got me confused because in theory, you're kind of looking at the same thing, but the execution is different. Sure, this isn't like a whole number, this is a percentage, but you can still showcase the difference as a percentage in both cases. So this is one where I kind of got confused. Maybe I just confusing myself. It's Friday, it's getting into the Christmas season, so everything's possible. So that's one thing. The other charts, they seem fine. The one thing where you should always be very cautious about is what happens in those cases where, for example, you have a table and you select a single instance, right? Everything comes to one. This is just to showcase the results. You don't necessarily maybe want to cross filter again from this. And I think it might be from the data, but non-live outcome, I think it was here. I might be wrong. I want to clear the filters. I got myself lost. Non-live outcome. Okay, yeah, this one. So non-live outcome. Okay, what would I expect is that the outline means the animal unfortunately died during the process, right? During the stay in shelter. But then I see that 87% of them were euthanized. So are we releasing zombies or something? So, because they were alive at the end of the day, it seems like. Because euthanization doesn't really, necessarily kill animals. But yeah, that's one thing. The navigation panel, the highlight, I would have emphasized it on a bit more, and I would actually used both of the things that you have done here. Whenever you hover over, you can see the outline is being colored in white to kind of emphasize on which is being hovered. But then when it's selected, you basically create just a small little outline for it, which people might not notice straight away. So what I would have done is maybe keep the same thing, extend it for the whole area, and give it the white outline to kind of fully showcase which one is being selected. That's one thing. And through the navigation, it's a very small minor detail, but you can see the alignment is not proper. So you have more space here than you have here, on the top more than you have at the bottom, here as well. So just make sure that all the elements are fully centered, easily aligned, and understandable. Um, this little button was kind of funny in the sense that you're playing around with icons, so that's kind of cool. But what I was expecting here is since you're giving me this option, I was really hoping that I can click on a specific pet or a group of pets to filter it out, but this is just to give me an understanding of what's out there. So might just be me, but it left me a little bit disappointed. I wanted to see a specific group of animals. But yeah, that works there. This one was fine. The only thing that I think on this part was a little bit confusing is this chart right here. Why? I mean, I guess that it's not a live outcome. Yeah, okay. Now I get it. Field parameters. If you have multiple options, make sure that you force one of them to be selected by default, because otherwise, let's see, coming here again, works fine. If I refresh the report, I just want to see the first entry. Yeah, see, none of them are taken. So the question is, what metric is being shown right now? Always make sure that you force a selection and a single selection, because I don't think you have multiple series. Yeah, so which one now is being shown? These are common things that happen. Don't worry about it. These are also easy fixes. Basically, formatting options, slicer selection settings, or something like that, and then you force single select. Make sure you just force one, and that there is a default selection, and do not allow multi-select. Well, single selection is kind of gonna take care of it, so don't worry. Uh, yeah. Other than that, I think it's good. Any other comments from you, Una?
I think I want one thing I can add is regarding the navigation. I personally prefer that instead of just using icons, you also add a name for that navigation item because otherwise it's a bit hard to understand, what to expect in which page, and yeah, for me it just creates a better storytelling. When you open up a report, you see straight away, okay, this is what it covers. This is what's going to be in the sub pages and stuff like that. So and I mean, this is not the common just for this report. I think we had multiple ones with similar approach. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think from a storytelling perspective, it just makes more sense to have those names there.
Yeah,
Yeah, other than that, great report, nice report. I also like the touch with the animal icons; looked very very nice.
it's kind of one of those things that makes you play around with it.
Yeah, makes the data exploration more fun.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, those were the top five reports. So if you guys have any questions, I see that there is one. Sorry, many screens. Just one question: is this for the reports that are using charts provided by ZoomCharts? So the top five, the way it's being determined is based on the submissions that we have for the ZoomCharts mini challenge. So Onyx Data has essentially two parts. There's the global challenge, where you can use multiple tools, multiple visualization options, and everything. And within that, there's a sub challenge basically with visual reports that include custom visuals from Zoom charts. You don't have to buy them. You can use the developer's license. It's completely free of charge thing, so you can use all available visuals, all the features, and everything. So you're more than welcome to try it out. But yeah, the top five and the review is based on the submissions that are part of this challenge. Any
Yeah,
other questions?
um, I don't really see one. At
Okay,
least not
I guess
yet.
we can quickly hide the screen for just a second. Then I can find the winner and we can announce the winner, right? So let me
So
just
the
check.
drum roll.
Yep, finding the right one, opening it up. Okay, I think we can push it back live. So the winner for this month's challenge is. Push it live. There we go. Nina Ikba. So, Nina, congratulations.
Congratulations. This is,
Woo!
yeah, very well deserved. Very nice job.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. No, we had fun with this one. There's always, like we said, minor little details that even we miss, and that's completely fine. But it's just something that allows you to see, for example, what else to take into consideration. That's all.
yeah, exactly.
All right. From our side, that's going to be it today. So from my side, I think probably from everyone in Zoom charts, congratulations to every single one of you who got into the top five. You had the best reports on this challenge. For everybody who didn't get, it doesn't necessarily mean that your report was bad. It just means that it didn't get into the top five, right? We have to draw the line somewhere. But the fact that you are participating is a good start already. It allows you to create, for example, reports. And what I think it's kind of cool about this is that it's going to give you sort of a backlog of the reports. So whenever you feel, for example, when you've been doing this, not even feel, but after a few months, it's kind of cool to look at what you were doing and seeing, okay, I've definitely progressed in this. I have learned how to do this. And in comparison, these reports are completely different. And that's what kind of gives you also the boost in emotions. But yeah, for those of you who haven't tried it or are just afraid to try it because maybe your skills are not that advanced in Power BI or anything, that's fine. Just try it. There's no judgment in that way. The main thing that we try to do through this community and through these challenges is give you the feedback, right? We want to give you an opportunity to learn, to showcase different things, so you can also understand what to focus when you start building reports. So yeah, thank you for everybody who participated. And yeah, of course, special thanks to you, Una, for joining us today. I know your schedule is a bit crazy, especially with the end of the year.
Oh, it's always crazy.
But yeah, thank you for joining us. Uh,
Thank
yeah,
you, and happy holidays, everyone.
yep. Happy holidays.